Have you checked the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are here to do a review of a brand new movie that is hitting the theaters. There's so much to
No pun intended.
No, fair enough. There's actually getting those writing chops back in business. I see. So let's dive right into Roland Emmerich's new movie, Moonfall. And we'll do this review like we do our normal reviews. We'll talk about the overall thoughts, the story, the acting, definitely the effects, all of that good stuff in turn. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be the longest review, but I say that sometimes, and it still ends up being a fucking half hour of me editing. So hour to edit, rather. So let's get into it. Fuego, I'm going to get your overall thoughts first.
Well, I think both of us, when we were hitting the socials, this being our first press screening in a while, we were both like, yeah, we're turning our brains off, checking them at the door. I mean, we didn't go in expecting, as we often joke, like Shakespearean theater or anything. This is a Roland Emmerich disaster movie, for God's sake. You know, I mean, the guy behind the awesome Independence Day, and then to a lesser degree, Day After Tomorrow, 2012. So he's pretty seasoned at this sort of stuff. So I don't know. I like the cast going in. I mean, Patrick Wilson, Halle Berry, you got a cameo from Donald Sutherland and, you know, Michael Pena. So, I mean, he assembled an interesting cast. And I'll say for the most part, even though they didn't really have a lot to do with as far as character development or a lot of interesting things to say, I did feel like they were enjoying themselves and that they were having fun. And I didn't really hate any of the performances from like our lead cast of people. I was expecting it to be a little bit more disastery though, and I felt like they really held off for like a couple really specific scenes, most notably some stuff in the third act. But aside from that, it was a little more character heavy, but just not well written from the character standpoint. A lot of cliches, but still, I didn't hate it. I think I went in with the right mindset, and for that reason, I was at least entertained. But this was not like a good movie by any stretch of the word. What did you think, man?
Yeah, you know, obviously we were prepared mentally for what this was going to be. And yet, it still was stupid on a level that is just like, you really, really, really have to check your brain at the door on this. Like someone said before the movie started that this is a very Fast and Furious brained movie. And I can definitely see that, but I'm talking, it's Fast 9. Like silliness, like
that's where they went to space, right?
Yeah, literally. So it is really, really dumb in a lot of ways. But that's the thing. Like at this point, it's just gotten so crazy that the dumbness is just outweighing even the mostly enjoyable aspects, like a good cast and the disaster parts. Mm-hmm. The dumbness of it all is just, I mean, if you can really just let go of that, then you can probably have a good time with it. I was having a struggle kind of the whole way. I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, and the funny thing is the movie tells you a number of times your rules don't apply anymore because they're like, yeah, don't bother trying to wrestle with what would actually happen physically to the world if the moon started to fall, because they're like, oh, it's not what you think, so our rules don't apply. So no, we wouldn't be flattened in the first hour of this happening like would actually occur. So at that point, the movie's making up its own rules the entire way. And it's like, normally in a movie like this, you check your brain for a couple of aspects, and then you can still enjoy the other aspects. This one, you really had to check your brain for every single aspect of the film, in my opinion. Again, that doesn't make it unenjoyable. If you can turn those switches off, then you can have a good enough time because it's a well enough executed movie. But I had some of the similar issues that you did. I don't think there was enough disaster parts. Because there was so much in space. But yeah, so let's get into it a little bit, and we're not going to spoil anything, but the movie is about the moon has suddenly shifted, and it's now no longer in its perfect orbit. Its orbit is declining. It is starting to fall, right?
And hence the title.
Now the thing to understand is this doesn't mean that it's going to drop like an asteroid and just flatten the world. No, the moon, of course, because it was in orbit, it will circle by and come close to the Earth a few times. So they're able to use that a few times through the movie in moments, of course, that are key dramatic moments. Oh, the moon's coming by again. Our gravity's going to be different. And so
there's very much a lot of because movies sort of bits in
oh
this,
my
you
God,
know?
yeah. Oh,
So
I can't wait
many.
to see the pitch meeting on this one.
Amen to that.
Oh, Lord. But yeah, so the moon starts to fall, and a disgraced astronaut, played by Patrick Wilson, because it's not unlike Meg in its structure, right? Because Jonas was a very respected scientist who saw a megalodon and no one believed him. So like 10 years later, a megalodon surfaces and everyone believes him. Patrick Wilson sees something in space. No one believes him, so he's a disgraced scientist. And then 10 years later, when the moon starts to fall and it's associated with something that he saw, it's like, oh, bring him in as the expert. Like, it's a very similar structure that way. But
This is very similar to a lot of movies, as you and I were talking about when we were leaving
yeah,
the
let's
theater.
do it. So it's a little bit Meg in that way, right? It's a little bit 2012. It's a little bit Terminator. It's a little bit what were some
Event
Event
another
Horizon
one that we get to once there's a little bit more of the explanation of what's going on with the moon.
Yeah, I mean, there's
even a little Contact in there.
yeah, Contact
you know?
for sure. Like, there's a lot. Nothing in this movie feels original. Like,
No.
it all just feels like pieces
no.
from other things, because you're like, oh, that's like that. Oh, that's like that. Oh, that's like that. Except none of it done as well as those things, right? But yeah, the moon starts to fall. And so he actually runs across, what did they call it? A megastructurist, right? That's
mega construct, I think.
no, I think it's a megastructure, because they're megastructures. So it's a
megastructure, mega construct. I don't know.
yeah, something along
those
that.
lines.
But that's what he calls himself, a megastructurist, which essentially could be called a flat earther, right?
Yeah.
Because he and of people of his ilk, played by Sam from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, John Bradley, I want to say his
I
name is?
don't know,
Something
but
like
that's
that.
why I'm just going with Sam from Game of Thrones.
John Bradley, yeah, he was on like 8 or 9 seasons, or all 9 seasons.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Game of
But
Thrones.
he's a megastructurist who believes that moons are actually alien created vessels that are containing white dwarf stars.
Yeah, the moon is hollow, and you're like, what?
He makes an interesting point here and there. He's like, what are the chances that it's, 400 times the distance away from the sun, but it's exactly far enough to eclipse the sun? Like, how is that feasible and stuff like that? And it's like, okay, whatever. But
and
anyway,
he points out to like the theories of Carl Sagan and some like noteworthy names here and there. So I mean, maybe there's like the slightest bit of science in the prevalence of fiction in this film.
Right, but I mean, again, in disaster movies past, there's always the one character that's not a part of NASA or whatever that knows more than NASA and struggles to get his, so it's that sort of thing. And basically they have to work together with Halle Berry, who was with Patrick Wilson in the original incident and now is a higher up at NASA. So they all have to work together to try and figure out what's happening to the moon and can they stop it, with only 3 weeks to go. Yeah. And let's not, I mean, obviously this isn't, this probably didn't weigh into it because this was in production, but there's a healthy amount of Don't Look Up in this as well, if you guys have watched that Netflix movie.
Oh, the Adam McKay, right?
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the story of it. I mean, they do realize that, because you see in the trailer, there is a swarm in space that is attacking stuff. So that's what they have to figure out how to stop. Again, without spoiling what it is or whatever. So I think the story, again, I think I pretty much covered it in my opening, was just super stupid.
Yeah, it was silly. It was very much where the more I thought about it, the more my brain started to hurt. And I think it was probably the same with the screenwriters. They're just like, nah, abandon all logic, ye who come here, sort of thing. I will say, though, I laughed more in this movie than I was anticipating. Not all the humor hit. There's a bit with a Karen, which I couldn't help but chuckle about later in the film, where they're like, why are you shooting at us, Karen? And you're like, what? So, I mean, Bradley was funny, some of the bits with Patrick Wilson and whatnot. So I did chuckle, most of these like big disaster films are relatively devoid of humor from my experience. They take themselves very seriously, especially in the 70s with like Towering Inferno and, Poseidon Adventure and shit like that. So I was at least happy that they had that sort of, ebb and flow, I guess. But really, this movie is big, dumb, and unfortunately not always fun. It really, I was feeling the runtime. By the time we finally got to the third act, where there was some very heavy exposition going down, like extensive hardcore exposition, which I did find a little bit fascinating though, without spoiling
I did too.
the explanation when they went really much more sci-fi as to what's really going on. That
Yes.
I did like, actually.
Yeah, I agree with that. I liked the third act reveals and stuff. I did enjoy that. It took an awful long time to get there, but if they had packed what was going on to get there more with more disaster stuff,
Yeah.
then I think it would have been a more enjoyable overall experience. Like, keep all the space stuff for like the third act, rather than going back and forth so much. You know what I mean?
Well, and also some of the stuff going on, back on Earth, like, yeah, there's some looting, there's this and that, but then we have a car chase for whatever reason, and I was like, okay,
Three characters that come out of nowhere, and
it felt
specifically for story purposes that
unnecessarily shoehorned in. For sure.
Not only that, but these characters are played like redneck lowlives that are smart enough to know to go for certain things like oxygen.
Because they're Aspen rednecks, man.
Oh,
so they're a little
right.
bit
Okay, they're Aspen rednecks. I forgot. These are the rednecks that Lloyd and Harry and Lloyd would have run across.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
where the beer flows like wine.
So, talking about the acting, because you mentioned it in your overall, I agree. I think everyone knew what they were in, but there was a couple actors that were a bit weaker than others. I thought the actor that played Halle Berry's husband was a bit on the weaker side of things. He was a bit more wooden.
Mm-hmm.
But, for the most part, again, everyone knew what kind of movie they were in, and especially Patrick Wilson and Halle Berry were like really going for it acting-wise, even considering the subject matter. Like, that's what was going through my head literally, and I don't know, this is probably a bad thing that the movie's making me think, like, how did Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson react when reading this script to go, oh yeah, I want to do this? Like, and like they can, but I mean, it's a big tentpole movie, so I guess I understand, It's just,
and also, I mean, they spent almost 150 million on this, and it's one of the most expensive independently produced films of all time, because Lionsgate picked up the distribution rights, but Roland, he assembled all of his money together from all.
I guarantee there was a hefty Chinese investor. Because,
there was. It was one of the biggest ones, actually.
Yeah, because they have their logo at the beginning, and much like in Meg, because to share
the one
production with that, they had to have the one Chinese, so they had the one Chinese character that ends up being a badass too, kind of,
Yeah, the exchange student.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, that's such an odd, like, addition. It just felt kind of out of nowhere, except that I knew about the production behind it,
Yeah, and at that rate, I think this will do a lot better internationally.
Oh, I think so,
and it's going to here.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to make the bulk of its money, I would imagine. I think Jackass Forever is going to beat this at the box office.
Honestly, I was way more excited to watch Jackass than this, but I still, and appreciation to Frost Communications for hooking us up with the screening, because we do love to talk about these movies, and it's not horror, but a lot of the situations are horrific situations, so
scary.
There's a particular occurrence in space that was very, like, straight out of an Alien movie almost, with an attack that happens, and I was like, damn, that's pretty hardcore for the movie we're getting otherwise, you know what I mean?
Yeah, when the first crew was coming, and there's contact that transpired.
Yeah, contact, exactly, very much.
Yeah.
So but acting wise, otherwise, that's all I really have to say about it. Sam from Game of Thrones,
John Bradley.
John Bradley, he was entertaining, but
he
was given a lot of dialogue that became super, like, hammy, like, where I was like, okay. Because he had that aw shucks moment so many times in such a oh wow kind of thing so many times in such a short period of time, it became too much for me. But
and there were definitely bits where I could tell Patrick Wilson was, like, he was kind of smirky, like smiling, like almost with some of the dialogue, like he was trying to hold back his own laughter from just the cliche derpiness of some of that stuff.
So let's get into the production of it all, right? We'll talk about that real quick before we get to the effects. It was a well enough shot movie. I mean, obviously Roland Emmerich knows his way about how to portray a disaster movie. There's a lot of really cool shots where the moon is, like, rolling, like rising in the background like a giant sun, and there's a lot of cool shots, but I mean, overall the actual production of the thing was fine for me. What about for you?
Decent. I mean, I thought the stuff that was shot the best and looked the most like sheen and clean and just cool and sweeping, which is what you would want for this big budget, something, a disaster you're seeing on a huge screen and everything. It was the stuff on Earth that I just didn't really feel was shot as compellingly, and I guess it's more so leaning into the effects, which I'm sure we're going to veer into right now. But like the disaster on Earth, like the flooding of some of the cities and everything, it just did. It didn't look that great, and it didn't really convey the disastrousness that I felt like was really necessary.
It looked very miniature-y.
Yes.
In a lot of places, which if they actually used real miniatures for some of it, it wouldn't surprise me, because he used miniatures in ID4 for the alien attack, and stuff like that. So
yeah, for like the White House and
yeah, exactly.
And that stuff being like 25 years old at this point, I feel like that destruction looked a lot better.
I agree.
It's crazy to think about.
Well, it's not that it looked better. All the disaster parts on Earth in this one felt a little rushed to me. Like it had, all of those things had big lead ups, right? The aliens attack, they settled over the thing, the bottoms of the ship opened up, like there was tension leading up to the disaster moment. Same with 2012 as the wave starts to build, and you build it up before it hits. In this one, it was a scene transition. He cut from a scene where people are talking to water just rushing into a city with no lead into it. I didn't even know what city it was supposed to be at first, and the water's just rushing in with no preamble at all. And it's like it's odd when it's done like that. Yeah,
and you're bringing something to mind that I really wanted to mention during the story aspect, at least, is the fact that I don't really feel like this film conveyed like the horrors of this situation really going down. We didn't see like a lot of death and a lot of character loss.
But there had to have been,
of course,
millions of people that died.
And that's what I thought, without spoiling the ending, is as we get to the ending and it's like, oh, all of these people are okay, and I'm just like thinking to myself, how many lives were lost in the aspect of all of this, and yet it's all cheery and whatever. And it didn't really just have those sort. I didn't feel the stakes really.
It didn't. The characters at the end didn't feel like they all went through what we just watched them all go through.
Yeah, the ups and downs and the like near hell of the experience of the world nearly ending. It didn't feel that extreme. Yeah,
literally gravitational changes and fluctuations where people were sucked up into space, at particular points. And it's like all of that would be like, I would have a really hard time processing that, I would think. But everyone else is like, wow, what a Thursday,
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we deserve another chance too.
God.
Yeah, and there were literally people there with some of those gravitational, shifting things where they're jumping and kind of floating, almost moonwalking sort of status. There were a few people laughing in the theater at those moments.
Oh yeah,
that I noticed.
Well, because they don't mention that this is going to happen. It makes sense that it does, but the first time it happens, like two characters are about to sprint for a chopper, and they just start bounding, and it's like, oh, what? Oh, yeah, I guess that would happen, but but it's so comedic when you see it,
It is.
So, yeah, effects-wise, though, all the effects in space look really cool, really refined, really sharp, but yeah, when it came to the Earth stuff, it felt a little rushed and lackluster for some reason.
Yeah, even the car chase we were mentioning, dude, I felt like I was watching that Peninsula movie again.
Yeah, with the CG-ness of it.
Cars.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the effects work really well, and sometimes it's a little shoddy compared to even what he has done in some of his movies in the past. Because there's a lot of scenes. You say car chase, and so it's a car chase going on when the gravity is being messed with, right? So it's not unlike the car chase scene from the beginning of 2012, where he's driving the limo as LA is crumbling around them before they get to the plane to try and take off, right? It's a lot of that, but all of that I was really locked into and keyed into and like, oh, what's going to happen? And tense and stuff. I never felt any of that tension in this one for those kinds of moments.
Yeah, not at all, unfortunately. I never felt like, the fate of the Earth was in doubt, so to speak, So.
And I see enough YouTube videos, especially right now during the harsh winter that a lot of parts of the country are having, where their cars on just a little bit of ice are like sliding uncontrollably and they can't get, and these guys are just like freaking like on snow and ice, like it's just freaking asphalt, you know,
Yeah.
drifting around corners and making it. I'm like, come on, guys.
It's
Your
'cause they're
car
driving-
would freaking do this, you know?
Because they're driving a goddamn Lexus, man.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
Yeah, right?
So anyway, that again, the stupidity of it all.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get past all of that, you might have a good time. It pushed my brain into the red as far as suspension of disbelief goes. So
Yeah, feeling yourself getting dumber as you're watching.
yeah, I'm like, oh boy, I'm not gonna let my kids watch this for a while until I can be like, no, this is not a nightmare you need to have.
Yeah. Until we've refined your intelligence accordingly. You're
Exactly.
Not
Yeah.
not gonna dumb yourself down.
No. So anyway, I think that's about as much as we can say on this one. Do you have any final thoughts, or are you good?
Well, we got Toto getting more money for their song Africa, but aside from that, there was nothing really memorable musically in this. I mean, the score was fine, you know.
That's a
Sound
good point.
design, I guess, you know, was solid enough for a disaster movie. Hearing just, you know, dead of space destruction and everything else. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think it was as bad as Independence Day Resurgence as far as Emmerich after stuff. It was more entertaining than that.
Yeah.
But it definitely. It's not even 2012 or Day After Tomorrow. It's far weaker than those two.
Yeah,
so.
I would agree with that. So there you go, guys. That's going to do it. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to click the like button down below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do that as well. We're going to be covering new movies this month. We'll be covering the new Texas Chainsaw for sure. We'll definitely be covering probably the Uncharted movie as well, I would imagine. Studio 666, I'm sure we'll do that too.
Yep, the Dave Grohl, that's at the end of the month. And there's some streaming releases we'll probably, whether they're Roundup stuff or whatever.
The Cuphead show is the one I'm
stoked for Cuphead.
Yeah, I think we maybe should do a separate review for that. We'll see, though.
That game has been the ire of my existence at times during the pandemic. So
fair enough.
I love it.
So thank you guys for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. If you want to become a patron, the link is in the description box as well. You can tell us movies that you want us to review, all that good stuff. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias a Jaime Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.
Stay scared of the moon. He's falling.
No, it's not.